Try This at Home is an AxFi Entertainment Group production, filmed on the mall in Kalamazoo, Michigan, at Public Media Network Studios in the Epic Center.
I woke up this morning, I could feel it was on the summit. The sunshine is golden red, a bluebird, blue sky. Lord, hoping it's right on time. You wait for me. Oh yeah, I can feel it alright. I can feel it alright. This ain't no back home. 56K internet and core Wi-Fi. It's the same old tune from long, long ago. So go try this at home. Try this at home. Try this at home. Try this at home.
Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. My name is Michael Queen. I am joined in the studio at Public Media Network once again by my co-hosts Damien Faust and Trevor Penn. Let's give it up for him.
Round of applause.
No,
I'm
wait,
actually
wait,
gonna.
wait.
I would like to now put him in a potential hotbox spot, but it's gonna rely on you viewers to make it happen. So for extra Patreon content, don't let this man fool you. He sang that in perfect pitch with his Willow Nelson, country man voice, and he didn't do that for you guys. And I really think he is depriving you of content. So
Almost forgot it.
and he just celebrated it. So I really think we need to get him some Patreon content, him singing that solo.
Yeah.
It might appease the tension inside of Damien right now from that air
Council does
horn.
not approve.
I wasn't listening.
The
Do you want me to
council
sing that
doesn't
part?
Does not approve.
Oh yeah, I know you weren't listening. It's cool. We're gonna get you on the hook. Somebody's gonna request it.
Don't
We're going
let
for
your babies grow up to be cowboys.
Oh.
You are wearing the exact same shirt as the last broadcast.
Well, I'll be damned. I am. That's because I didn't want to give a Willie Nelson update.
Yeah.
You know what's so sad?
Let's
I
get on
really
that,
don't
actually.
like much of that arena rock country music, but I got the perfect singing voice for it.
Oh, yeah?
It's tragic.
I really want to discolor this thing that I really have an affiliation with and love for, but I'm going to act like I don't. Let me
It's not
space
true.
myself
It's not true at all.
in the verbal while I secretly delve in.
So I'll give an update to the Willie Nelson thing. I did remember, I should say, more remember than discover why my family gave out so many Willie Nelson shirts. Not only is my mom like a super fan of Willie Nelson and always has been, but what I didn't know is that that's where her and my dad went on their first date, was to a Willie Nelson concert. And like 90% of the concerts my mom's ever been to were nothing but Willie Nelson concerts.
But we did some scientific research, and we did find out Queen was not conceived at this concert.
Oh,
No. I know. I don't
didn't do
know
that
where,
research.
but I
I'm
know
not taking
where.
credit for that.
So while I went back home to visit my family for a week, and I was editing the podcast episode, my mom heard that part at the beginning where we were talking about the Willie Nelson shirts. She was like, "You idiot! You know that's where me and your father went on our first date, right?" And then the next thing you know, she's pulling up YouTube videos on the TV of Willie Nelson, and that's pretty much what she did every night until 2:00 in the morning. When I had to work in the morning, and she just wouldn't let me go.
Love what you love, man. I love the sound of
But
that.
no,
You're
it was
getting
cool.
quality Willie Nelson time in with you and your mom.
Yeah, it was pretty cool though, because a lot of the videos that she was showing me were him in the studio, and he performs a lot with his family. Like I know that his sister was his pianist for his entire career, but she died a few years ago. But now his sons are both some of his backup musicians.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I start watching it. I was getting fascinated.
His
I was like,
sons, well, at least the twins, had like an 80s hair metal band, I thought.
really? That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, so I
could
start
be
calling
wrong
out.
on
I start
that.
calling out the microphones. I'm saying like, "Oh, look, they're using Neumann U87 there. Oh, look, those are the AKG 414s." And then my mom starts asking me questions about it. She's like, "What are those things that they have? Oh, that's a baffle. Why do they have that?" And we just start bantering about that, just like we do on the show here. So then instead, I told her, I was like, you know what? I do this on the weekend, Mom. If you're interested, go watch our podcast. We need the views.
I hope she watches this episode, and I hope she gets after him again for that voice impersonation. I don't sound like that, Michael. And she's going to pop you in the back of the head, and I'm be like, go, Mama, Queen. That's right.
All right. So what are we going to get into today, gentlemen?
We are going to get into effects, which is one of my favorite things. We're going to continue our episodes on MIDI and software instruments. And we're specifically going to be talking about signal effectors. Effects.
So we in our last episode, we covered, right, generating the signal or putting the signal that we are going to be working with into the chain and different ways we can manipulate that. This time we're really talking about taking in effects, right? Specifically being then we already have our signal, what it's going to be, but now we want to affect that signal between its source generation and the output we as listeners hear, right, from our headphone speakers, whatever, going from there. So.
Yeah. And before we get into that, Nelson was a band in the 80s that was a glam metal band, but it wasn't Willie Nelson's Kid. I did a Google.
Oh, you did the Google.
I just wanted to correct it before the comment trolls get in there on it.
Yeah, right.
They weren't also, 80s hair metal. They don't even
honestly,
know.
If you do want to comment troll us, I'm fine with that. Like, it drives the content.
Right.
So so signal effectors, right? I love effects. There's, guitarists in general, most of us at least, have some sort of pedal board in front of us, which is an analog version of a signal effector. But before we get into what those are specifically, I just want to touch on the importance of knowing the distinction between and how to blend your wet and your dry signal.
Very good point.
Yes.
Because anytime you put any effect into your signal chain, it's, of course, going to drastically, depending on what the type of effector is, drastically change that signal, and you might still want to have an unaffected signal of that you might want to mix in and out. So a lot of effects themselves have a dry and wet mixer on them. But there's also other ways where you can do that, where if you have a soundboard, or you can even do this in the digital space. As a matter of fact, let me show you this real quick. Can we go to my camera, or my computer, that is? And I'm going to go inside of Logic Pro. And we can always put effects on any type of effect we want, such as a reverb. Let's just find some rando reverb.
And actually, reverb is a perfect example of how to blend your wet-dry signal effectively. Because reverb is one where having a good, strong, dry signal, I think, makes it shine a little bit more. You don't want to completely saturate it, and you find that good spot to blend it.
I'm curious if there is similarity, right, with when we're dealing with guitar and we're affecting guitar tone, as in the vocal world, because I think this is a great spot to say, right, you frequently hear us say, tools not rules, man, tools not rules. Here specifically with reverb and delay, really any effector, but because these are the two most common, besides compression and EQ, you are going to find, there is at least a rule of thumb. Right. And the fact of the matter is, there are times when overwashing and overwetting that reverb is going to sound great. It
all depends on what you want to do with it.
But truly, that is far rare than not.
Yeah.
Most often
that's
it just sounds too wet. It sounds overwashed in whatever effect or effects you're trying to do. So just, again, it's tools, not rules. Make your art, make your creation. But if you're having certain mixing issues, if you're having the song sounded different before you put that on issues, you realistically need to probably just check those two effects and your wet dry mixes we're going to go into. But it's probably too wet is the real answer. You just got too much.
Exactly.
I want to make sure you can hear it.
To answer your question, there definitely is very similar, I think, mixing space on the guitar signal with reverb and the vocal signal with reverb. Personally, when I'm doing, I'm not as great as vocals, but like with a guitar, when I'm getting my guitar tone, the two things that I really want to dial in properly first are my compression, which is usually what you do with vocals.
You're gonna get the signal tamed first.
And then if I am putting a reverb in there, I want to figure out how I'm gonna blend that. And I don't know if it's true for vocals, but it is true for guitar. When you're dialing in your reverb and your delay, at least on my analog pedal board, it changes based on the room you're playing in a lot.
Yeah.
So you need to figure out where your wet dry needs to be, especially if you're going to be a guitarist who likes to just edge with feedback. You want to bring it in and control it just right, that means you're going to have a signal that's going to be very, very close to feeding back almost all of the time, which
Right.
means you really need to get your wet dry in for that room, because if it's a smaller room, your pickups actually will pick up the sound waves coming back on your guitar.
Sure.
And so will the mic that's
Worth
micing
noting.
it, and your speaker will output that. So
Worth noting with that wet dry, what we're really diving into, and we'll just still keep it surface level for understanding, right, is that every room has its own resonant
Yes,
frequencies.
exactly.
It resonates most attenuated to, right? These frequencies have the easiest amount of time replicating, multiplying, and therefore being perceived dynamically louder. So when we're trying to set our, tone or EQ, compressor, whatever, for a room, understand what you did in one room. The reason why it won't work in the next is because you're in a whole new space of different dimensions, length, width, heights, shape, curved edges versus flex edges, where they are to all of these things matter about how your microphone or your sensor, if it's a pickup, is picking up the vibrations or the electromagnetic field that is sending a signal.
And that's a
to.
shout back to one of our previous episodes when we were talking about Studio City and the drums and why they sound so good is that room.
Oh, right.
That room and that mixing board specifically.
Well, that's a good point, because that's what I'd like to show you guys here.
Yeah.
So let's go to my... Yeah, we're in the right spot.
To segue a little bit really quickly before you explain this, we were talking about wet dry signal, and what Michael is doing here is a direct in through the MIDI controller, right? So the room does not affect this signal in the slightest.
Right.
It is
Also
is
select
sheer
the room
headphone
instrument.
and speakers there, output.
Yeah, so I just got Alchemy pulled up. Alchemy is a synthesizer that comes prepackaged with Logic Pro, and it sounds without this reverb on there like this. Oh, well, there's already a little bit of reverb delay on the thing because these things have their own. Let me find something that's just straight. Let's try a bass.
Yeah.
Classic bass. Dubstep's always fun.
You bought the reverb on bass? Definitely an
No.
electronic
That didn't even
musician.
change
Here we
it.
go.
That's good.
Something with a little more attack. How about this guy?
You just change the attack on it.
That's better.
That's fine.
But I'm going to go up another octave.
Go up another. There you go.
There we go. That's not bad. So that's what that sounds like without reverb. And now I'm going to put the reverb on it and listen to it now.
I brought your volume up just a little bit on that, Michael, so we can get a better signal of it.
Yeah, much better. So notice that there's that wet and dry mix like we were talking about. And the dry signal is the complete unaffected signal. So then we can mix in
Do
our
that again
effect.
really quickly. Let's do it a couple of times really quickly. Repetition legitimizes, right? So viewers, listen to this. That is your 100% dry signal of this particular effect on.
Now we're going to wet it up.
Now we're going to wet it up with the reverb. That's a 100% wet. So that's that signal going all the way through those reverb settings you see on the side there.
Right.
And you can already see things we've already talked about, right? The first thing you see is attack.
Now, here's another thing you can do with this, though. As we talked about, a lot of these effects, the hardware versions and the software versions will have a wet and dry way you can mix that. But what I found for a lot of things, especially things like vocals and drums, if you want to use specifically things like reverb, and keep in mind that you can do this with pretty much any plugin, you can send your signal over to another channel, put the effect that you want on that channel, right? And then have it be completely wet on that channel. That way you have two different faders that you can use to mix your original unaffected signal or however it's already been affected post fader there. And then a completely separate one just for this other effect you want to be applying to it, which is a very typical practice with pretty much any sort of effect when you actually have them on a board. You have effects processors that are built on a board, or you'll also notice a lot of boards just still always have these aux loops that you can use to loop in effects.
So I actually want to touch that. Kind of segues into a couple of things.
Let
here
me quickly show you how
Yeah.
that's done, though. In this program, and every program has a similar option, you have a section here on your faders called sends. You can send this to a bus. Remember, buses are what? They are channels on which multiple signals can be combined. Mm-hmm. So we're going to send that to bus 4, whatever, who cares? We're going to turn this up here, right? And then now if we will look over here, we have aux. We have that aux 17 over here. So You can put any other effect on there. Let's put that reverb back on there. And then let's pretend that. Notice that when you put it on an aux, the program just automatically takes the dry mix out and turns the wet mix all the way up, because that's usually why you would put that there in the first place. And why would we do that? Well, because you can say a vocal, for instance. A vocal always sounds really good with a little bit of reverb, right? But it seems to sound more natural when you put that on an aux send and move it around. And not necessarily natural. It also allows you to be more hyper realistic with your approach to how you're recording those vocals too. Hyper realism is like, think of in movies where somebody pulls out a Glock and you hear this, but they didn't actually put a bullet in the chamber or anything like that. They didn't do anything to that gun. Guns don't make that sound when you just move them around. Right. But in movies, they do that all the time. And usually, like, you just hear things in a way in a movie that is not how it happens in the real world.
Right. And that's actually what people who work doing the score and the audio effects in film do. Specifically, they take that scene, and in addition to the dialogue that's coming through there, they want to make sure that the viewers have a sense of what's going on in the scene too, right? Like someone pulls a gun out and shoots it, it's obviously going to make a noise, but you don't always want to actually shoot a gun when you're filming something.
That right? And also in movies, guns don't really sound like that. Like in movies, you hear that psh sound when you hit somebody. If you've ever hit anybody, you know that's not the sound that it makes necessarily, depending on where and how you hit it.
Well, I'll jump on right here, actually piggybacking off of a concept both of you brought up that I think is why our buses are what they are, right? Because on the one hand, I think, Queen, what you were getting at, right? You may realistically interface multiple different, because it is likely you will interface multiple different reverb plugins, and every plugin is different, right? Usually a bus will solve the problem if you just find that the plugin itself does not have the dynamic range capability you need up or down within the plugin. Often putting it to a bus, you have, giving yourself more flexibility to manipulate dynamic range. Same with you, like when you're saying like the shot is fired off in a movie, right? Having done sound design for the film, a lot of it is because just like buses, right, is a place where we can combine multiple signal. It's usually because I specifically want certain sounds to be perceived as happening in the same space.
In the same space.
And so
perfectly.
To do
so I got an
that,
example
right,
set up.
And also, while you're setting up that example, I
already got it set up. I'm ready. When
I do want to say one thing that's really important to people who are trying to do this at home, right? As we're adding things into our digital mixing board here, right?
Yeah.
You need to be aware of how much memory it takes to run this
That's
application.
what I wanted to get
and
at.
how much processor power it's also going to take to run that.
And delays and reverbs eat processing power like crazy.
Now, my guitar signal that I've been using for our project that we work on together, I've basically just been running through Guitar Rig, and it's pretty much only, my guitar and your bass running through there. So processor power, my older, like 2012 or 13 MacBook is able to handle both of those signals pretty well on 8 gigs of RAM and whatever processor chip that it has in there. If you start running a lot more of these programs on there, you need to make sure that you have the machine to do it. So,
and for electronic musicians, right?
Yep.
A lot of your newer, more complex synthesizers, just one of those tracks, eats memory. You need to know that. And in a very simple, basic concept, just to think about it anyway. If you have 7 signals or sounds or tracks you want to be affected by this reverb, you're either going to have 7 reverb units on every track, or you can create 1 reverb unit in a bus that you send all 7 signals to. And for the sake of what Damien's pointing out, right, the amount of memory your computer is going to be utilizing to create that effect is either 7 or 1. Well, we just decreased our CPU workload by 700%, right? That's the effect when we're talking about now making your hardware be maximized. Get what you can out of your gear.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just wanted to make that point because it is really it's
a very good point.
Very important point when you're using the digital resources that are available.
Doing that practice not only can help you save on hardware resources on your computer, but it also sounds more natural. As Trevor was mentioning, like when you want to make multiple things sound like they're in the same room, that's how you do it. You would bus everything to the same place and then put those effects on there. And specifically when we're talking about reverb, one of the best things to do, I find, is at the end of your mix, once you've got everything mixed keeping in mind that in most cases you'll be multi-tracking everything. Sounds are isolated. They don't all sound like they were jammed in the same room with musicians together. So if you want to get that sound,
Unless they were.
yeah, on the master bus, on the very end,
They absolutely do.
before your limiters, before things like that, you just simply put a reverb on there and just give it a little bit of wet mix, enough to make it all sound like these instruments were recorded in the same place. That's very important for drums, and that's very important when you're multi-tracking at different days,
So-
even, because the weather's going to be different, humidity's going to be different,
I've
and
got-
things are going to sound different in your studio no matter what.
I've got a very professional tidbit on that, like technique wise. So when you're miking things in a room, right, there is a specific. You're going to get if you're playing the band together, they're all in the same room, and everybody's making noise out of their own speakers, and you're multi-tracking everything. The other microphones for the drums are going to pick up a little bit of the bass, a little bit of the guitar,
Mic bleed.
a little bit of the vocals, and that's called bleeding. Yep. And if you look at the first Oasis album in the 90s, definitely nope, that was their second album.
Gotcha, okay.
That was their second
that's the
album.
one I know.
Story Morning Glory. Their first album is called Definitely Maybe. They very specifically used bleed as a technique to make sure that their record sounded a little bit louder than everybody else's when that got played through the jukebox.
That's smart.
I can, especially with how effects worked back then,
Yeah.
a lot of that analog gear. A lot of that is actually because they were utilizing, believe it or not, some of our mechanical and inherent mechanical and electronic noise that our analog gear always naturally makes. But then by
Exactly.
adding just a bit more, it's the effect of now what we electronic producers know of what we can do with white noise, right? By simply
Right.
of crescendoing in and out white noise into anything you do, you can make the most unlike punchy thing exactly sound like because people can hear it, they can feel this wave of
Right.
wait
Yep.
a minute, there's this white noise, but nobody knows this noise, but that's what's actually rising up just subtly.
Let me show you an
on the bottom.
example of this, by the way, when you're wanting to make a whole bunch of isolated sounds sound like are listened to in the same room. I have a drum kit loaded up here. Right? So what I've done is I've sent everything to bus 5. Not yet, I didn't.
You want to actually just loop that drum track for a little while and just bring it down a little bit, and while you're doing that.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll say while he's doing that in the meantime, right, to really frame it in very simple terms, we're talking about spatial design, right?
Yes.
Everything we're dealing with is sound design, and a subsect of sound design, because a lot of people don't actually realize a lot of our perception of space has more to do with our ears than it does our eyes.
Yep.
And so when we're dealing with, inside the world of sound design, well, now when I'm dealing with reverb delay, what I'm really actually doing is you are designing the space. This is how our body
Yeah,
perceives
so-
how big or small, what shape is the space that I'm in is based off of these reflections.
If you're trying this at home, when Queen's taking this over, this beat's been looping for a while and it's been in your head. And if you're already like, man, I'm tired of this beat, I don't want to hear it anymore, and you're trying to get into the audio world, you need to train yourself.
Get over that.
To have the discipline to know that you are going to listen to something on repetition
Over and
over.
You know what? I have
and
only
over
only
and
one
over
caveat
again.
to that. Do not train yourself to repeat music you do not enjoy listening to.
Correct.
You will quit.
Right.
If you are at that stage of the
Get
game,
over that too, 'cause you still might have
simply
to.
continue training on that which you could listen to for the rest of
Yes.
your life, as far as
Yep.
you're concerned, forever, because that'll get in your muscle memory. If you decide to pursue it further and you're doing it for other clientele, it'll already be. You'll just know. You have no
Also-
choice. You have to listen to it.
Also,
more
the
than
other
once.
thing that I wanted to keep that beat looping for is now we've got in our head, because it's been looping for a while. Our brains have been picking it up. Even our viewers have been listening to this. Your brains have been picking up what this beat sounds like. Dry.
Dry, yeah.
Oh, is it dry? I thought you were
is dry.
increasing wetness
Well,
while we were
Well,
going.
yeah, I'm going to be doing that now.
Okay.
Yep.
So, as you see here, I sent everything to a bus. So we have our unaffected signals here. We still hear that. That's still going down to the master bus here. But it's also taking a detour and going over here. Not even quite a detour. It's splitting off. It's cloning itself and going somewhere else to this bus right here, where you see some energy in the fader here.
Pay attention to his mouse
Now,
cursor.
I'm
That's
gonna
where
turn
we're
our-
looking at, folks.
I'm going to turn our reverb on now here too. And now everything, it feels like you're coming
Now, hold
inside of a
up.
club.
Hold up.
Like you're in the front vestibule waiting to get
See,
your
do
tickets
Do this for
coming
me.
in.
Do this for me from right here. Leaving that as it is. Leave it on. Leave it on.
Yeah.
because this is how our ear can catch it. The most prominent drum our ear is used to catching is normally the snare. Can you go to just the snare and just mute or turn off its send to the reverb? And now you will hear when it sounds like
so
something is not
easily.
in the same place.
Let's go. Well, there's 2 snares, so I'll take both of them out.
Yep. Let's just mute both those out. And can you just hear how the snare is not affecting any of the reverb watts? So you can hear it hit, but you notice the reverb doesn't react to it.
Yeah.
That's what our ears are picking up. Every other sound is causing a resonance, a vibration, a disturbance in the airspace. But this snare, one of the most prominent drums admit, it's hitting, you hear it, but the room, the space sound isn't responding to it at all.
Yeah.
That's what we mean when the ear is picking up. This doesn't even sound like they're the same
And
spatial
so,
area.
therefore, now that I have a fader on that, if I want to feel like I'm more in the room now where the band's playing, we'll pull that down a little bit. But we still hear the room. Here's the difference. Still dry. And now, it still sounds nice and cool, but it sounds like we're in the room hearing a drummer
Right.
play.
And that's
And
what
now
it
we're
means
gonna
when
get-
somebody say, "Can you hear the room?" Like, what does the room
Bingo.
sound
Right.
like? And people are like, what do you mean? What does the room sound
And
like?
now we're gonna get
the
closer
room
to the
has a
stage.
sound, not everything else. The room itself has a
And
sound.
closer to the stage.
You said we got
Less
closer
room.
to the stage.
Less room.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now we're walking back out. Now it's empty and there's nobody in the room. The crowd hasn't showed up yet. They're just opening the doors.
Yeah.
The large high school gymnasium
Yep.
with empty bleachers resonating, waiting for things.
Well, that was fun.
Yeah. Well, this is the kind of not necessarily the nitty gritty, but this is where you start taking the audio engineering portion of it, in my opinion, and making it art, right?
Yeah, doing the real artistry here.
doing the real artistry here, and also kind of having fun with it, just messing around, see what you can do, see what it sounds like, see what you like better, why you like it better, and then, as the real important thing, and we're going to get into this in our last couple of episodes here, is your final mix before a master and how you're going to get that out there.
Yeah. No, that's actually going to be.
But we're not getting into that there. We had that reverb going through. So that reverb was Chromaverb, which is built into Logic Pro. And it is what kind of reverb, Michael?
It's not what you're thinking. I don't remember what it's called, but we're.
I'm just.
This is just a regular reverb unit, and the way it is, it works.
I know it's not what it. I know.
So the algorithm that you would create in order to create a plugin like this, when you're creating plugins, by the way, you have to think of what's actually happening with the sound in order to try to figure out how you're going to recreate that in the digital world. In this case, when we're talking about reverb, we are talking about a delay of a signal, but a delay specifically that's less than 5 milliseconds, because anything more is perceived, that transient is perceived.
Is it 5? I thought it was a little bit slower. I think it's like 20 milliseconds and slower.
20 milliseconds?
Is besides hearing the distinct transient, I thought it was at 20. I could be wrong.
It's 5 after that, where it's like delay, but it's like slapback delay. Right?
Got you. Okay,
Yeah.
copy that. Got you that. Okay.
So anything less than that is perceived as a reverb, but reverb is a little bit more than just a delayed signal that's repeated and then decays after time. It's also certain frequencies you get lost as well, because when sound is traveling, sound travels at different speeds.
because they're multiplying in different ways
Yeah.
at different magnitudes and then hitting each other. So
when you're in a room, sound is bouncing out. Some frequencies are reverberating and coming back, canceling themselves out on the way back to your ear. Some of them refract around the surface. The larger, lower frequencies, depending on the surface, will refract around it and keep moving.
Well, let's
and
be
they
honest.
won't be reflected back to you. So you start to lose low end as reverb.
Well, I was
keeps
going to say,
coming
like,
back.
in general,
Also-
when you think about it, I mean, it technically, right, from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, that is what reverb is. That's what our perception of it is.
Right.
Frequencies are canceling at all times.
At all
it's
times,
just
right.
at different levels of dynamics and moving, right? So, like, the same frequency will not hold the same dynamic of cancellation
Right.
through and the
And
passage of
these
time,
principles
all in the space,
were
and that's what we're
actually
picking up.
how our early theaters were designed. We didn't have ways to pick up sound that we do now, right? Then, so what did we do? We made sure the spaces that we had this sort of art presented in, either music or drama, whatever it is, the theater was specifically designed in a way to carry the performers' voices.
Yep.
all the way to
It
the
would
back
resonate
and
all the
sound
way to the
relatively
back.
the same no matter where you're sitting in that
Which
room.
is why you
Yep.
saw those early stages either have like a mini amphitheater behind them, or the crowd would either very deliberately go up or down. It's because sound was traveling a certain way right there.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing about reverb that's very important. There's a type of we've talked about panning before, where you're panning in the stereo field, but there's also something called binaural panning, and that is what
Fancy words.
Yeah, that's not what just allows you to make something feel as if it's over here or if it's over there in the field, but also around behind you or all the way to the side. And the reason why is because when sound sources emanate out, there's still reverberation that happens, but there's also a slight time delay from when you hear it on this side. If something's over here, that is. When you hear it on this ear, there's a time delay from when you hear it on this ear, as well as when the sound reverberates and comes back, there's a time delay when you hear it from one ear to the other, because your head itself is a baffle.
And
probably one of the better baffles that exists.
Your head also exists as baffles do, as a great frequency canceller or neutralizer. So there are certain frequencies that from a sound over here are being canceled out because of the gray matter between your ears.
And with technology is literally changing right now in how we're getting those into our brains, right? We got headphones right now, right? But they're the new glasses that literally, or even headphones that literally will clip to the outside of your ear and not go in it. And
use bone resonance.
They use bone resonance.
Oh, I've tried those out.
By resonating the small bone in your ear.
Yep.
I got to say, I think they're cool. I think they're very great. I don't think they're great for actually listening to music.
No.
But for taking calls and also still being able to interact with the world around you, they are way better than that. They're way better for that
I think
purpose,
the marketed
but for
appeal is
music
for
listening.
people who have to work in these dangerous, heavy machinery factories or
Right.
things like that. If you need to be sonically aware of your environment, but you also have an employer who's cool enough to be like, hey, we'll allow you to add reasonable volumes, enjoy music or talk radio or whatever. These are the perfect headphones because you need
because
full
somebody
open.
can come up and talk to you and you'll be able to hear them. Yeah.
Well, machine
The
may
low
be
frequencies.
malfunctioning and you may get your digit back because you heard it malfunctioning rather than be like, oh, everything's fine. My arm. You know what I'm saying? Which has happened for real. It's some crazy stuff out here, man.
The next thing I had segue wise for us is to make sure we're talking about the difference between regular reverb and convolution reverb.
Synthesized is the word we're looking for, right? We have synthesized reverb, and then the reason why synthesized is different than convolution is because convolution is kind of like our sampler. In the music world, like we're taking a drum sample, that's an actual recording of an actual drum that happened, right? And our convolution reverb means we've actually taken a sound reverberation sample, if you can imagine that, recording of an actual space, and that's what we're now using as our base root, and we're building around that similarly how we do. Whereas the other one, we used algorithms based off calculus, right? Some advanced math that says sound should, generating from this point, bounce around like this to however many degrees of calculation their algorithm is effective, blah, 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 whatever. But so that's really how we're separating. Was it just an algorithm or was it actually a sample of a real space, a big room, an alleyway, a staircase, and
So let's show an example of that.
Yeah, exactly.
This is Logic Pro's convolution reverb. It's very powerful. It is called, what's the name of this? Space Designer. And notice that there is a WAV file that's loaded up here. So to be very simplistic about it, because there's nothing simplistic about a convolution reverb, really.
Let's be
That's
very
why
serious.
it's called convoluted reverb in the first place. So it takes the frequency response that it gets from that wave that you upload to it, and it pretty much uses that to create the space that you're trying to go for. And you can do some really interesting things by loading any wave up in there. It doesn't have to be what we call an impulse response, and I'll tell you what that is a bit more in a minute. But you can take a whole song if you want. You can take an air horn and just upload that to your convolution reverb, and then the reverb that is created is based off of that. It's a little bit harder to explain, easier to show.
Those are some higher end convolution reverbs, right? That are allowing you to add in now your own.
No, this one will do it too. In fact,
really?
Let me go and find a sample, and I'll just toss this in there. How about this one? So I can literally take this Damien's favorite sound ever and just drag and drop it in there. It's not loading up for me. Come on, guy.
And the heavens shall rejoice.
Come on.
At the sound.
Why are you doing this to me? That's not it. I'll work on that in a minute. But so think about it this way. The great thing about convolution reverbs is you can do what's called taking a frequency response. And
we talked about that in one of our first episodes. Actually.
Yes, we did, actually.
A frequency response or an impulse response?
Sorry, impulse response.
Okay.
We have not talked about impulse response.
So an impulse response is where you are pretty much measuring the room. And you do that by putting a signal generator somewhere in that room, and then setting up microphones and recording that. And the signal generator must specifically be what's called pink noise. And what is pink noise? It sounds to most people like it would be white noise, but it's not the same. White noise is what you get when you have equal amplitude of all frequencies across the audible spectrum.
From 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, because that's all we can perceive.
Pink noise is when it's a specific frequency and all octaves of that frequency are at equal volume.
Which is doubling and halving, right? Simple math. Doubling and halving gives us our octave.
Yeah. For instance, if you had, here's A. Let's pretend, I don't know what I got that set to right now, but let's pretend this is middle A. When that's a drum, so it's not going to do anything. Yeah. If this is middle A, then the next A, that is
440 hertz.
440 hertz. That's its frequency. The next A is going to be 880.
Or 220. Either way, double and half.
When you go back.
Yep. Half it.
Very simple math. And pink noise is when you get all of those. That way you can sweep that frequency, and every room has some sort of, at least one or more resonant frequencies where one frequency just kind of bounces around that room really well and
stays
easily.
alive. It
stays
keeps bouncing.
alive.
It doesn't
just keeps
die
going.
off.
And that's how you can find that and tame it if you want to, but it's also how you can analyze and record with pink noise, sweeping the frequencies of this room, and then take that recording, drop it into a convolution reverb, and now you've easily just, with a drag and drop, recreated the sound of that specific room. And we were talking about sound studios. I have been on a quest. So if anybody knows about that, Sound City, yeah. Sound City Studios. I've been on a quest to find, since that studio is shut down for good now, I'm sure that somebody must have taken an impulse response of that room before they shut that down. And if anybody knows how to get it or knows if it does exist, please let me know, because it's like a quest I've been on.
There are some folks that, to my knowledge, actually purchased that studio to maintain it, with the idea of maintaining it. It's not open to the public, which it never really was.
No, because Dave Grohl bought the soundboard. He bought most of the gear in there and transferred it to his place. That's what that documentary that he did is. He made it before they shut that down for good.
Oh, really?
And now, I mean, it's owned by somebody else. I think it's like a warehouse or something. It's underused for just how magical that space is, but he still grabbed the soundboard, and therefore, since it was so magical, there's no way that nobody took an impulse response of that room. So if you can find it, please, I beg you, let me know. How much?
Only hope.
How much is
in the
it?
music world.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes you can get these for free. Sometimes, and in a case like this, it's probably going to be a very expensive purchase just to buy this one WAV file to make a convolution reverb out of it.
But hey, if you got that resource, you got the diamond.
Yeah. So,
where we at to next, fellas?
Well, after convolution reverb, we're going to actually get into the next effect that's used most commonly, I think, is going to be delay.
Well, delay is the same as a reverb, only, again, it's anything after 5 milliseconds. Right. Oh, no, that's an echo. I think that's what you were thinking.
So like echo is the most primitive form of our delay.
Yeah.
Because that's how we start with it, right? We did. Maybe if you were, under the influence of something or got, your bell rung a little bit, you could maybe start hearing multiple transits of the same sound source. But in reality, right, we're hearing our one sound source, which usually is our voice and an echo, bouncing off of distinctly the objects around us. If you've ever been hiking through the mountains, right, you do a quick shout through the hills, you can hear your reflection come back. So that's what we're talking about, delay. Echo is delay. But when you think of just of it coming from one sound source, as often our voice or our sound instrument is one sound source, that's echo specifically, because we then therefore have stereo delay.
Right. Speaking of, I'm pulling stereo delay up right now.
Basta Bing, which is literally just two mono delays, but pan to each ear because we got two of them.
I put it on the drums for the hell of it.
That's a really good example of seeing how the stereo feels, especially if our listeners
because we've got some transients to hear.
If our listeners are making sure they have the stereo mix of this particular episode, you'll really hear that. Mono listeners, you won't get the full effect because you're only coming through one speaker.
And have you loaded up an echo plugin as well, just so you can bypass and show?
Well, it can still be an echo because all we have to do here
is completely
pull down the delay.
Well, but that's changing the rhythm. But I mean, as far as so they can hear the true difference. Now, when we're talking about from an audio engineering standpoint, when we think of mono, we do not think of a signal in one ear, right? we think of down center.
Sounds like garbage.
Yeah,
It
turn
does,
that off.
but that's what I mean. So can we pull up an echo
just
echo
lost
plugin
viewers.
that will actually? I'm so glad you said that. Can we pull up an echo plugin that we can just bypass on and off between the two, hearing the difference between mono center and stereo left right?
Yeah. Here we go.
So listen to where this feels like you're hearing it at. If you close your eyes, where does it feel like it's in your skull? And then go to the stereo. In one simple word, width, right?
Oops.
Width.
Sorry.
Do you feel the difference?
That was the space designer.
There we go.
Oh,
That's
there
the
we
stereo.
go. But same concept,
Still.
right? You can hear the width, how much you actually distinctly hear transients in one ear versus the other, whereas the other one sounds like right down the middle
Right
because
down the
your
middle.
ears are hearing them at the exact perfect same timing. So
Much different, yeah.
All right. Well, we actually don't have much left to go over, which is good because we don't have much left time today. We still got about 10 minutes here.
Can we give you a little story about how delay got created, though? It was the Beatles, allegedly, and the reason why was because they were super high when they were in the studio, and they were loading up more than one. I think they were probably trying to make some automatic doubling or something, but they were doing some tracking with analog tape on the reel-to-reel machines. So they had the same thing loaded up into two different reel-to-reels, and they were listening back through a master bus, sending those both through the same signal and hearing them. And when they got loaded up, when you do automatic doubling, it's kind of the same idea. You kind of copy the sound, put it over again, but then slightly delay it, so it sounds like it's two different voices. But he put it a little bit too far back, so it went, and it was also a little bit turned down. The second one was a little bit quieter.
Yeah.
So it went, and then and instead of going, oops, let's fix that, since they were stoned, they were like, whoa. That sounds cool, boys. Let's record.
So-
let's get four of them and do that and record it.
So as far as bands go, I might upset some people here, but I don't think the Beatles were like the greatest band in the world, and that's not why they're famous, in my opinion. Right? I think that the Beatles' real claim to fame is how they changed
commercial
music and how
Audio
they recorded
engineering,
commercials. They really
They did a
challenged
lot of-
early audio engineers in all of their recordings, which started as a template to what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
That's the Beatles' greatness to me. It's not that their songs are the best ever. I really think that
disagree.
They're great. I do love the Beatles, but I think that they get more credit than they deserve, and that there are other bands that were way better, especially live, like I don't know, Parliament.
Well, that's why
I would rather see Parliament than the Beatles any day of the week live. 'cause
Hey,
those
I
dudes-
I was blessed enough to see Parliament, and you're
Yeah,
right. I'm going to that show 100 times out of 100.
I was
man.
sad about
Right.
that too. Like that was the day before. The day
Oh,
before that,
you missed that
Raekwon
show.
played, and me and my buddy Johnny went to see Raekwon.
yeah.
And while we were there at Bell's, we realized we saw the sign for Parliament, and we tried to get tickets at the last minute, and we couldn't. They were sold out. You went to that one?
I don't know if I went.
I'm
to
pretty sure it was
that
because I saw
specific
you
sold
post
out
some
show.
pictures with your dad like the next day
Yep.
at the P-Funk show.
And we was out there vibing, bro. It was
Sad, dude.
fantastic.
Shout out to George Clinton. I know he's got a special place in his heart for Kalamazoo. He hits us up quite a bit.
And
so.
and that's the respect, man. That's about
Yeah,
it, bro. Like
yeah.
it was when somebody told me like, no, George Clinton, like he loves Kalamazoo. It actually made the city in a way, and I'm born and raised here. I love Kalamazoo, right? But it
Right.
made the city have it like oh wait, like the George Clinton has
Yeah,
a preference
yeah.
towards my city. Oh
Right.
yeah, George Clinton likes my city. I don't even know what you're talking about.
You know, I'm going to shout out to
He loves
Kalamazoo
my
here
city.
too. I mean, there are a lot of issues that we definitely have. But
Shout out to
also,
Kalamazoo.
There, you know, it's a magic place.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, no.
If you're going to shout out anybody, they're getting a air horn every time.
You know, there's a good culture here, especially in our arts community, that you see and feel.
it's beautiful.
That's why I stayed. Is it's really easy to find a lot of fellow musicians here, a lot of fellow artists, and connect. And build a lot of relationships and network, which is really important, I think, in maintaining your art career, is being connected to your art culture and your community, which is why things like the public media network are important, I think, right? Is that it allows the community to have that platform.
Let that be said again for the people
So,
in the back.
we're going to segue back into our last couple things before we wrap here. The first one I want to talk about is, and we don't necessarily need to pull a live example of it up, but in Logic, I think it's just called like a flex or flex pitch.
Flex pitch?
Yeah.
We'd have to
original-
load up a WAV file to do that.
Yeah, we're not going to get into it too much, but this is another common effect that a lot of people have heard, and it's sort of controversial right now.
Well, wait.
I mean, it has
So
been.
flex pitch
And
is
flex
their
time.
automation interface, but we're talking about pitch correction,
Yeah.
and that a lot of people have heard of
I was
by
going to
that
get
name.
into
It's just pitch
get
correct.
into auto tune and how auto-tune actually was made. And because that's basically what those pitch correction softwares do, is they actually
I can pull that out.
figure out,
you should be able to pull up their
where the wave
Well, I can
is
pull one up, but we don't
and
have a
how
WAV
to
file.
put it up or correct it,
Well, right, but they could take a look at the interface and really what controls are we manipulating to when we're dealing with the pitch corrector in general.
And this
Well,
software
there's Antares makes one of the most famous ones. This is not the Antares one. I don't have
the
that on
Antares
here.
is, I think, the one that was originally made by the person who invented it. And the way that it was invented, it was actually invented by a geologist whose job it was to find places for oil companies to drill. So what did he use? Manipulations and wave through the Earth's crust.
I remember you telling us
Right.
that.
He had a friend who was a singer, and he just thought, I wonder if I could just, do the same thing with my seismologic instruments or I don't know the term, as I could with voices. And, the physics match. They do work. They do apply. And that's how Auto-Tune was created, is he wrote it into a software program that you can use in a digital audio interface.
Well, see, I can say I do, like most of our effects that we have nowadays, right? There definitely was pitch correction around. The reason that made Auto-Tune stand out so great was because of whatever math they did, people could audibly hear, this is like none of the math that pitch correction has been built on, right? Algorithms are math formulas, right? So they're being built on some math structure, but there's always been some sense of what we would call computerized or digitized. There was a sense that you knew something inhumane, something a human body could not naturally replicate or produce occurred. But then Antares comes out and it's like, we definitely know because we're humans and therefore not perfect, this wasn't human. But this sounds absolutely as human as our ears have ever heard a digitized, affected sound, and they built on that.
When most people think of Auto-Tune, they think of that one specific setting on Auto-Tune that T-Pain and Cher used quite a bit, quite famously.
Do you believe in love and I'm love?
Right.
Now we out here working, one thing's for sure. All right, sorry, I'm going on.
So that's not all Auto-Tune is. It's just one specific setting on it. You had been hearing it in recordings way before it was used that way and just didn't notice.
Yep.
Right. You couldn't tell that they slightly pitch corrected that.
Right.
But the technology began, I think, in the 80s is when people
That's what I
started
said. That's when I
using
think
pitch
we
correction.
technically first start getting our first,
so recordings.
Yeah, but they were always trying to make it sound in a way where
Yeah.
you couldn't tell it was affecting the music.
Well, that was
like-
always the initial goal.
Right,
Yeah.
But in normal, true primal fashion, it was very
it had
hard
these-
to make it sound not detectable. Right? You could definitely tell when it was like, hey, there's something else happening
quantization
here.
errors happening when you used it a little bit too much.
Correct.
And everybody hated that for a while until people like T-Pain, and even you got to give some love to Cher. I mean, she's certainly not the one who pioneered that, but she did come out with one of the first songs that a lot of people can remember that was all over the radio, where you're hearing intentional quantization errors,
and the audio
pitch quantization
engineering
errors.
team and the mixing team that brought that song about.
Oh, of course it would. I mean, it's not like she was the one who came in there and was like, guess what we're doing today, guys? I had an idea. There's no way.
Or maybe she did with that deep man voice.
Instead of pulling up something in flex pitch, I just want to touch base on the next most common effect, at least especially in the guitar field. We use this all the time. It is distortion. What does distortion do?
Well, distortion is a distorted signal. As we were talking about before, when we were talking about microphones and signal flow and all that, we mentioned how the general rule of thumb is when you're trying to get any sort of preamp dialed in, you want to get the signal so strong that it doesn't clip, because when it does, that's when it becomes distorted. Your voice does this too. When you are pushing air out through your vocal cords, your throat and your vocal cords can only transmit those frequencies so well for so long until it gets too strong, and after that it becomes a scream. And what is a scream? What's the quality of that scream that we can describe? It becomes a bit more white noisy, because as your signal and your beautiful sounding frequencies you're creating are coming through, whether it's your vocal cords that are flapping or whether it's an electronic signal that's going through some cables, it'll eventually get to this point where it cannot transmit that anymore properly, because the signal's too strong, so it starts to cut off and all these other partial frequencies start to come out. And when they start to come out and get louder, we now start to get closer to all frequencies being equal amplitude across. And that's what distortion is. There's many different ways to do that in analog, and pretty much.
Well, analog is how we invented that.
That has to be
right?
one of the best graphical descriptions I've ever heard. I mean, given of distortion like that was round of
Thank you.
applause.
Good job,
I just,
Thank you.
I wanted a round of
Good
applause.
job,
That
Michael.
description. Very
Thank
well
you.
done.
Thank you.
It is a good description of
Golf clap.
distortion. And, you know, well, I'm going to wrap on a couple things because we got a time crunch today.
By the way, let me say one more thing
yeah,
about it. So
go
in,
ahead.
in the digital
Well,
world,
and I'll get a remark in as well.
the way you do that, the way you accomplish that is not necessarily by strengthening the signal, because when you are strengthening the signal and it starts to clip and get cut off, you're also reshaping the wave you're creating. So in the digital world, that's how we create distortion, is by wave reshaping. Meaning as those sample and holds are coming in, sample and hold, as it's digitally reading where your amplitude is, it will take that and remap it. And remap these samples to different places, and that creates this distortion that can sometimes sound unrealistic, but still cool. Or sometimes you can do it in a way where it'll sound like a realistic, like electronic guitar or something like that. And for many years, electronic guitar software distortion plugins sounded like garbage, and nobody really wanted to use them until somebody got the brilliant idea of realizing what's the difference between going direct in with a distorted guitar to your board, isolated, and the sound of a nice, juicy, great amp. It's the room you're in. So if you've ever noticed things like Amplitude and even Logic Pros,
Logic Pros is pretty good.
Logic Pro always has an option where it shows a cab and a microphone, and you get to choose where that microphone is.
Goes.
They're using reverb algorithms to create that sound by having sound delayed when it comes to a certain type of microphone with frequencies that are stronger than other microphones. And that was the big key. Making this guitar, this distortion tone sound like it's being mic'd in a room.
And so I've been playing guitar for 25 years, and I've been around for the full gamut of how we've changed from the analog to the digital world. And finding that was key, right? Because your digital distortions before then, if you were going into like Digitech or Zoom had like a full-on pedal board and you were using that for your sound, it didn't sound as good, and especially didn't carry very well in the room that you were in. Right. But once they mapped that out, that I think was the game changer to like, okay, digital is a much more viable option on guitar now for even live settings and recording settings. So Trevor, you wanted to get one bit in?
Yes, want to make sure that we throw in a remark because distortion did probably make its way into the mainstream hands down because of guitar, right? Playing over guitar and rock and roll music, things like that. But a lot more of your popular electronic music, the effects people are loving, they're hearing over their vocals. It's distortion. We're wave shaping over.
Yeah.
It's done a lot more like we should be doing our reverb and our delay, right? Really, really low amounts of distortion, just enough to be perceivable. So it's not a lot, but that's really what it is. We're reshaping waves a bit differently and seeing how our wave file responds.
And drums too. You can use bit distortion. Bit distortion is created by literally, when we were talking about bit depth, it's by literally reducing your bit depth to a point where you have less amplitude to choose from, so it quantizes even more. Starts to sound like 16-bit, 8-bit sort of
our
sounds.
old video games. Boop.
I love putting that on drums, so it all of a sudden becomes like this bit distorted, crunched sound. And I also just love, even if I'm wanting to go with a real drum sound, I like to put a very ever so slight amount of distortion, just clip distortion, just a little bit on my kick drum. So juices it up.
I'm going to wrap us up today. The origin of those distortion sounds and why guitars are getting heavily credited with it are because guitarists would basically just crank their amp back to a point where it would overdrive the actual tube sound, right?
Yeah.
And that's where you started to get that distortion because your speaker you were kind of harming it,
right?
While you were making that sound.
As I understand, they would do that on purpose. They punch holes with a screwdriver into the diaphragm.
That's
to make it
whole,
distort even more.
Episode in its own worth of content that we can get into in the future, dial down into details.
For sure.
We are trying to get a high level overview, which is the point that I want to end on today. There are a lot more effects that we didn't talk about today.
Yeah.
There are a lot of different ways that you can do the effects that we did talk about today, and a lot of different ways that you can get those and where you can get them and how you can make them sound. So just keep in mind that is just a high level overview to get you started.
Tools, not rules.
This
Tools, not
what
you got.
Effects, and as a guitarist who loves using effects, This is a rabbit hole that you can spend a lifetime down, and it is a blast. I love it. So
that is excellent.
Yeah, that's basically it for this week. And hopefully in the next episode, we're going to get into actually what a full project file looks like and start talking about how that works in a DAW and what a finished product is going to look like in the process.
Creating a project.
That's gonna
If
be
only
fun.
I had the honor of doing that with you boys. But I have.
Oh, yeah. All right,
And on
let's get
that
out of
note, it had to be done. It had to be done.
here. It really didn't.